Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Atlantic Bushcraft Adventures. Tonight we are on episode 355. Actually, there, Ben, I had it wrong. And tonight we were going to talk a little bit about how to represent yourself as an outdoor enthusiast. And Ben and I were talking about this, and I'm not going to lie, it's more his topic. I'm going to let him lead in here in a second. Fair warning, folks, I do have a head cold, so I won't be talking as much tonight. Maybe beneficial for some of you out there. You're tired of listening to me. But I am going to try and play along. So if you see me hacking and coughing and going on, Ben will probably hear me. You folks won't, because I can mute the mic for you folks. I can't mute the mic for Ben, so I'm sorry, Ben. But anyway, here we go. So what are we talking about here tonight, Ben? Lead us into kind of how you want to go around all this.
Okay, let's see if I can offend or upset any people. I this all came around because I was recently at the outdoor show, and there was a group out there advertising their particular how to put this, their particular set of beliefs, and ironically, I am not as far from these people's beliefs as I might sound at the end of this conversation, but it's how they're presenting themselves that really have got offensive to me. And that's what I want to talk a little bit now, and I'll decide how deep I want to go into that in general. But I want to really make sure that we as outdoors enthusiasts, as bushcrafters, as anything else we do when we get out there, that we represent ourselves in the most positive light we can, because it's really easy to lose the rights and freedoms we have right now. And some people get very offended by this, but when you get rights and freedoms, these are privileges given to you by society, by government, by grace of people around you in a lot of ways. And if you abuse it in a way that they see unfitting, then people will eventually start coming for these things. And one of the things that I think about with this is we like to go out and camp. And I like to go out camping near rivers and streams and beautiful places. And if you decide to go, and we've talked about this in the past, and camp by these rivers and streams and leave a whole bunch of garbage and filth and destroy the trees and leave burnt offerings and all that out, so when somebody comes by later, they think, what a state. The next thing you know, there's a law or a fence, or there's rangers there telling you can't be here, you can't do these things, and we lose these rights and privileges. And these are very valuable to me.
So just a little story before you move on, Ben. Like I said, I'll fill in where I can. A prime example of this is when I did work for natural resources, especially if you're on crown land and you found leaving the area in a mess by, like what Ben said there, leaving garbage, burning stuff up, slashing down good standing live trees, altering the area and stuff like that. If I shouldn't say we, no longer work there. At the time, if we found it, good chance that we're going to dig through everything that's there, especially if you left some identifiable stuff, and we're going to be paying you a visit. Next to that, if it's a repeat thing, like if there's this one spot, in this story I'm thinking of from where I used to work, there was this one spot where kids always used to go to swim and camp and hang out and do what kids do when they shouldn't do it. And anyway, they always used to leave the place a mess, and they were always there with like gas bottles, and they would make these homemade Molotovs and throw them at rocks and stuff like that. And I mean, it was basically a gravel pit that was beside a river, and was it safe? That's another debate, but regardless, this was all crown land. Anyway, after enough calls, we put cameras up. You know what I mean? And that's a reality. Like, it won't be, they'll never catch me. If you cause enough of a problem, they will invest the effort to figure out who it was. And we used to do that on a regular basis. Get those stealth cams, jam them up in and around the area. Yeah, you may find one or two of them, but you're not going to find all of them. And once we find you, generally we get our cameras back.
Yeah, I mean, and it doesn't take much for them to figure out eventually who you are. There's more options to find people now than there's ever been. And so that reality truly exists. And I hear a lot of people in our community complaining about rights and freedoms that are being taken away from people. And they're getting rightfully upset over some of this stuff. But sometimes you have to take a mirror and look at yourself and think, am I part to blame? And I really want us thinking about this in our society, because if there's something you truly enjoy and you want to protect it, you have to make sure that you are putting your best face forward. You want the society to look at you as a blessing, as a gift to them. So they do everything they can to protect you, and it doesn't take a lot. Some education, being friendly. These things carry way more weight than we really think it does. And going at people and being angry and yelling and throwing an aggressive stance is rarely going to do what you want it to do. What it's going to do is get that other side in an aggressive stance. And then it becomes a numbers game. And it doesn't take too much to get people against you. And all of a sudden, your bike trails disappear, your off-road accesses get gated, more and more things disappear. And so it's really important you don't. And we have organizations like the Nova Scotia Bushcraft gathering. What's the channel?
Nova Scotia Bushcraft. Literally just Nova Scotia Bushcraft, man. I was like, I don't know where you're going with this.
Well, one of the things I want to talk about this, because I think this is a very positive one, and this is what I want we should look towards being more like.
Can I interrupt you for one moment?
Yeah.
Only because Eric did ask a question, and I'm going to try and explain this as best I can. So Eric was asking, what do you mean by Crown land? Is it not public? So let me explain a little bit for those of you. We do use some terms here in Canada that may not translate as well around the world. I keep seeing a reflection on my lip, and I'm like, is there something wrong? Anyway, long story. So Crown land in Canada, yes, it is public land. However, in Canada, the Crown, being the king or queen at the time, whatever, because Canada was originally under British rule, so we still say Crown land. Basically, at any point, the government or the Crown wants to own between 11 and 14% of all basically wilderness areas. And there's reasons behind this, and that's a whole other debate, and I'm not going to get into that, but that's basically what it means. Is Crown land is just government-owned land. Generally, it is public access, provided that you follow some basic rules. So you can go out and camp on it, but you can't erect any semi-permanent structures. So tent's fine, but technically you can't be out there like building lean-tos and stuff like that, only because they're considered semi-permanent. You're using the vegetation around it, and when you leave, the structure stays. This also kind of works for like hunting blinds and stuff like that. You can erect a temporary blind, being like a tree stand or a pop-up blind, but you can't really go out and drop like a building there as a blind, because now you're back into that semi-permanent structure. They don't mind you using the land, they just don't want you really modifying the land, and that's kind of where semi-permanent structures come in.
And all these lands have different restrictions put on it. So if you look into it, some are more protected than others, and those up more protected reduce the amount of things you can do on it. So some of them, hunting is allowed. Others, it's considered like a wildlife reserve. That would be no hunting. And some of those will, almost prevent you from entering it at all. But most of them will, in most cases, Crown land is publicly available for
recreational use is the best.
Yeah, recreational use, and as long as you're not endangering the environment in any way, shape, or form. And this is a great thing. This is a great thing. The states have very similar things. They have I can't remember the name on it, but I've been down there. But they have publicly available land that you can do stuff in. So it's not different in other countries. The titles and restrictions will, of course, be local. But what I was saying is the Nova Scotia Bushcraft page really worked to champion bushcrafting, and it was created to be a very positive environment that encouraged people to get out, that we could share resources and knowledge and training. They put on events. I say we because we were involved in a lot of them. We did help. We did not organize them, but we were also presenters on these. In both of us presented, and at least the very first one, and I think we've attended many others. And it's really important to realize what that is all about. That forward-facing public view of us showing up to parks and sharing our knowledge and being friendly and open, that leaves a really good impression with the general public. But if we had gone around and said, no, it's our right to do this, and started like just doing it in almost in spite of people, it would be much harder to keep doing this. And I think we have to be really careful because I see some trends in the world right now where people are occasionally getting kind of aggressive with it, They're using symbology that really shows what they're talking about, but they have to think how it's going to be perceived by the other people. And so I don't know if I can avoid it, but it is one of the the firearms rights peoples that
I
I
was going to
met.
say, I think you're fine to say what it is, maybe just not who it is we're talking about.
And their particular symbol had what I think could only be interpreted as an assault rifle. And the problem I have with that is people are afraid of that right now. We've recently had the Tumbler Ridge shooting here in BC. People are up in arms, and even if chances are, like I didn't do a lot of research on that particular shooting. I don't even know if that's the type of gun that was used. And we know that you know people have to wield the gun for somebody to get shot, but it's an image in people's public. And what we need to do, if this is what you want, and both me and Robert own guns, we believe in gun ownership, but we very strongly, and I'll speak for myself, but I think Robert's going to immediately back me up on. We also very strongly believe in responsible gun ownership. And so if you have a
Education and
gun,
responsibility are the key concepts. Even here in Canada, where things are so tight, they can be enforced very well with proper education and following a lot of the laws and regulations and stuff we have. 100%.
and I'm not going to say what these organizations are doing in areas aren't great, but I really think we need to focus on making sure our image, if that's your thing, our image is as strong as possible, a positive one. Because if you're going to do stuff, your image should be very much an image of positivity. That this, we're here to do good. We are here to represent what we're doing, and education. I think there's nothing we can do more for our causes is to educate people on why we do things and why we believe the things should be the way to, and show how we're doing it in a very responsible way. So I really believe in training people how to properly use guns, or how to properly set a fire in the woods, or properly set up a camp so that you leave little, if not no trace. These are all things that if you train people to do this and you get people out there and doing it. And we also need the police ourselves. And by this, I mean, if you go into a site and you see filth, and one YouTuber I've watched witnessed him do it himself, Lone Wolf 902. I went to campsite with him one time. When we got there, they had made a total state of that campsite just before we got there. He cleaned a lot of it up and he videoed it, and then he posted it, and he swore on YouTube about the type of people would do that. And it's just not right that they do that. So he shamed them for that. And I think that's important. We have to police ourselves, because if somebody else has to police us on these things, we're going to lose it. And that's kind of my whole spiel on this is when you're practicing, your hobbies, your things, you have to be working in such a way that people look at you and say, that's a responsible person doing something that's good. And if they look out and say, what a reckless fool or what an idiot, it's going to look bad on you and everyone else who does similar things.
No, 100%. I couldn't agree more. Jumping back to the Crown Land thing, Andrew followed up national parks ? A little bit more clarification. Crown Land comes in two forms in Canada. There's federal crown and provincial crown. Technically, it's all owned by the government. It's just how it's managed. So national... Sorry?
Which government, right? National
exactly.
government.
So national Crown Land. So here, like in Nova Scotia, we got Kejimkujik Park. It is a federal park, so it's regulated by federal laws and regulations. If the province has a fire ban on, for instance, Kejimkujik may not, because it's federally owned land. They go by what the federal government tells them. Versus the provincial parks like Dollar Lake, Porter's Lake, things like that, they're bound to the provincial laws and regulations. Basically, it's just a quick look online and you can figure it all out. It sounds really complicated. It's really not too terrible, though.
No. I mean, but it's similar. Like, I'll use comparative to states. If I go down to the states, there's national passes and regional passes or state passes. So to go in some parks and recreational areas, you have to have the national one, and other ones you have to do the state one. In Canada, you have to have the national one for certain parks and that, and then the provincial ones for the provincial ones. It's a similar thing. I'm sure every other country has something ballpark the same. And then you have municipal parks
Yeah, there's
exist.
municipal parks too. I kind of forgot about that. Like Trenton Park here, not too far off from me. That's municipal. So, but
Yeah.
anyway, looping back. So you were talking about policing this ourselves. So, in your opinion, what are some good things that we can do to try and police this to ourselves? I know you used the example with Jeremy there about doing the video and stuff like that, but what's some other stuff that we could do?
Well, one thing is if you're out there and you see things, before you leave, if you see something that's wrong, you clean it up. If you see somebody doing something's wrong, speak up. And that can be scary. I'm going to be the first one to admit. You go to a bunch of ruffians out acting a fool, and you're a lone human being, and you go up and say, "Hey, man, like, I don't appreciate what you're doing." It could end poorly for you. And
Tone is
somebody,
definitely going to be a key concept up there. I wouldn't be pointing fingers and going, "You got to do this." Sometimes just being like, "Hey, man, do you mind picking that stuff up? It's just going to be garbage, and somebody's going to have to clean it out. At least you can, especially if it's cans or something. The one I always throw that to them is, at least you get to keep the nickels. You know what I mean?
here's another example, and this is one I went through not too long ago. We were on some crown land, and there's some rec sites you could camp at, and it was out of season, so there's nobody at the rec sites, and at least nobody from the province. But what there was to get to the beach, there was a whole bunch of big rocks laid down so that people just couldn't drive cars and stuff down to the beach. And a couple of guys show up with some Toyota and Jeeps with the big 35 36-inch wheels type deal on it, and they drive over the top of these rocks that an average car is not going to do. You beat it up. But it was nothing for these guys. They moved a couple of logs to make sure they could kind of get over it, and they drove over the top, drove down to the beach, set up the rooftop trailer or tents, and stayed down there for a couple of days. And there's your situation. Like, we were the only other people camping there, and we were leaving gear at our site and driving around. We had motorcycles at the time, and like, we talked to them. They were more or less friendly people. They weren't assholes, but people obviously didn't want people driving on the beach, and these guys felt they had the right to, so they circumvented a barrier that was put there. And if I said something next, I come back, maybe my campsite's gone or tore apart or missing something. You kind of hope that the people around will also keep an eye out for your stuff, right? So you probably try to be friendly. Maybe it comes down to just asking a question. Like, do you think it's okay to drive over the barriers? Like, you can't tell. You don't have to necessarily tell them, like, "Hey, don't be here," but just ask them, like, make them think about it on their own. Like, is this really the right approach? They do it because they had the ability to do it. They bought those vehicles so they could do stuff like that. You know what I mean? Like, it
No,
exists.
100%. And in a different situation, perfectly acceptable. You know what I mean? Another example I was thinking of, as you were talking about this one, is ATV trails. There are specific ATV trails, at least in this area, that go through Crown land, private land, and stuff like that. There's an ATV Trail Association in Nova Scotia. They maintain these things. They know where they can go through, so they're not disturbing waterways and stuff. And every now and then you'll see a sign on the side that says, "Do not drive off of maintained trails." And you constantly see specific groups of people that enjoy going through bogs and stuff like that generally. And yeah, I'm going to pick on those people, and I apologize. No, I don't, honestly. Anyway, they'll go off the trail and they'll go down through these bogs and stuff like that, thinking they're just having fun. But they're actually disturbing waterways, because now the runoff from that's going into a river and it's potentially killing some fish, or a bedding area for amphibians or stuff like that, or it's tearing up the marsh and bog itself, so it's no longer filtering the water like it's supposed to, and now you have polluted water going into people's wells, or it's just actually altering a waterway, which is what I've seen before. They had run I don't even know what they're called, like a mud bog or a slick or whatever you want to call it, so much that it actually started diverting a small stream. You know what I mean? So that changed the actual layout of the land. And that's kind of like, at the time, you think, hey, it's only this one time, it's not going to hurt anything. But you know what? If enough people say it's only one time, it's not one time anymore. So the other side that I'm going to go with Ben here is don't perpetuate things that you know aren't right. If everybody else is doing it, you remember the old the old
I think
saying, if everybody jumped off a bridge, would you do it too? This is kind of like that. Yeah, it might be fun, but knowing that it's wrong, set a good example.
and I
Stand on
think
the
like that,
hill. You know what I mean?
when you think about this, people buy these ATVs that are capable of doing this stuff so they can do it. And then really there's very few places in this world where you're allowed to do it. So I kind of understand the logic of doing it, but then what you have to understand is the environmental aspect. And I've been on bogs that people had drove across 5, 6 years before. And believe it or not, the bog still wasn't recovered. You can still see those ruts. You can still see plants that still haven't been able to recover that land in those years because it is semi-permanent. Like there's an effect. Some plants don't recover well. Some mosses and stuff take years and years to reach the level that they're at, and you just drive in or walk in and tear it all up because it's convenient for you.
And that's the other
It
thing. There
has
are endangered species, both plant and animals, that could be potentially affected on this. What you think is a quick jaunt down the beach, for instance, if it happens to be Martinique Beach during piping blubber season, guess who's going to jail for a while? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, and that's it. Those are very sensitive birds, and we've been trying very hard for years, probably 40 plus years, to help recover those populations. And one reckless season, and we can set ourselves back years,
Easily.
right?
So what does all this mean for us? Ultimately, at the end of the day, leave no trace is the best method that you can absolutely do. Everything you pack in, pack out, all that good stuff. That is kind of the high-end extreme, or whatever you want to call it. Let's talk about realistic for most people. There's nothing wrong with setting up established campsites, provided we do it the right way. Don't always potentially camp on the exact same spot for long periods of time, because you can compress that soil down, kill any vegetation and stuff like that. Move yourself around a little bit. Try to maintain only one fire pit. That's a big one that most people don't think about, is every time they come to the campsite, they set up a new fire pit when the old one's still there, and it might just have damp ashes in it. You're much better to remove the damp ashes, use the same fire pit. I tend to just put them around the outside of it and kind of, make a bowl situation, and it'll all dry out and work out fine.
But I was going to say, or there's the other option. There's the fire bowl.
Yeah.
Like, steel bowl, stainless steel bowl, or there's a thing you can get out. It's like a mesh net, and it's 4 poles, and you hang the fire over the ground, and you can protect the ground from that. There are ways you can have your campfire and not leave trace. There are methods. There's even methods of having the fire on top of a couple of logs so it doesn't burn through and get to the ground. And then you could just take those logs and dispose of them more properly after the fact, because they'll be mostly burned down. There are things you can do to definitely protect all this stuff. And the other thing, and this is what I want to get to, the organizations that you're possibly a member of or you support, speak up to them. If you see something that you think is leaving the wrong message, the wrong impression, and hurting your case, make sure they take a thought of that and maybe correct their behavior. Because these organizations are important. Don't get me wrong. They are important to have organizations that are out there working towards helping us build these things. And there's some really good organizations out there. And a really good example, I think everyone would be familiar with, is Ducks Unlimited.
Yeah, absolutely.
Unlimited is a group of hunters who got together and said, we know that we love hunting and we want hunting to be around for a very long time. And what we're going to do is do everything we can to make hunting as positive as possible. And this is an organization that generally I think you can respect. You look at Ducks Unlimited, they are in Shubenacadie Wildlife Park and many other places across this country. They have education centers where people can go in and learn about ducks and wetlands and all this other stuff. And they put a conservative effort into preserving and maintaining wetlands for themselves and people for the future generations to enjoy. They are protecting land for that very reason. And I think that is the type of thing we have to look at. When you look at the image that you're portraying, is it one of positivity and protection, or is it one of selfish and aggression? And if that's the look it's got, you're gonna get You're going to get canceled.
Yeah. And that's it. Here's where I may start annoying or offending people is we're in a culture where that is incredibly common now. People are, I hate to say it this way, but people are more sensitive or more aware nowadays. I don't know which one it is, but anyway, it's a bigger problem, or it's a maybe not even
Yes.
a problem. Maybe it's a good thing. I don't know, but it happens more often. You know what I mean? People speak up more. I think that's the way I need to say this appropriately, is they speak up against these things more. So yeah, if you're driving off that ATV trail, instead of most people just ignoring it, like especially in the 80s and stuff like that, whereas, oh, you know what, they'll never hurt the planet. Now it's kind of like, oh, you know what, that's not a great thing. People are going to speak out against it more. If we are out there and we're setting fires and more forest fires are happening because people are not being responsible with their campfires, or there is garbage left everywhere, or somebody's washing their clothes in the stream and they kill a whole bunch of salmon fry or something like that, people are going to speak up, and then you will not be able to access those areas. Cancel culture is real. They just cancel things. You know what I mean? Sometimes for the better, sometimes for the worst, but it is a real thing that we have to maintain and live with in today's society.
Yeah, I mean, I fully agree. And I mean, sometimes it does mean we're going to adjust our behavior that may not be optimal in what we truly want, but it will still allow us to enjoy the things we love. An example I have, because this is a disappointment for me, I kind of thought about owning a handgun. I've never owned one, and for years I didn't think I'd ever want one. And now it's very much difficult in Canada. And I think if we were to present it right, there might have been the option to leave it open for sports shooting and still, but we might have to commit to generally leaving it at a range or having to get a transportation permit to move it from one range to the next and never be able to bring it home. Or if you home, you'd have to show you have certain additional things. We may have to take a higher standard than we ever did before. But
I can actually speak to that one a little bit. I was a sports shooter. I took part in handgun competitions. I went and got my holster course. I got my black badge. Used to do IPTIC competitions. Used to have a ton of fun at it. Now it's not worth doing. All the hoops I got to jump through, I just got rid of them and said, screw that. You know what I mean? It's just too hard. It's too annoying.
And that's the disappointing thing. And I mean, but to protect it, it would have taken education on the public and showing that we are doing everything to protect them, because too many crimes were committed with handguns. And unfortunately, we know probably not even the handguns that were brought legally. But it doesn't change the perspective of people seeing a handgun involved in a stick up. And so they're like, why are they so easy to get? And it makes it harder for absolutely everyone, except the criminal. They're still figuring it out, but that's unfortunate. But
I will say it was, you know what? No, I'm going to be quiet on that. Whole different topic for a different argument. I'll leave it alone.
So anyways, a bit more of a sensitive topic than we like to. We're not generally political, and I'm not here to push gun rights, but say if this is what you're pushing for, or if you're pushing for the freedom to use land for recreational use or anything else like this, we have to put the most positive foot forward. We have to show that we are the type of people you want out there, and they want doing these things, and that we're here for the positive reasons. And the best way to do this is positive education, positive engagement with the public, and really being out there in a way that makes people think, hey, I really like that. I want to be a part of that. And not, and which I felt this weekend, like, I don't want to be part of these people. I want to distance myself from these people as much as possible. So I seriously took a thought about just getting rid of my guns because I didn't want to be associated with that. That's how upset it made me. And so I wonder how much it upset somebody who's already against guns.
And once again, folks, we're just pulling guns as the topic comparison for tonight. This can be said about a lot of things.
It's a bigger problem. It's a bigger problem.
And that's just it. It's not that one issue. Don't think that's what we're here to hark about. We're just using that as an example because it's a hot topic in Canada right now, and it's an easy comparison.
But we have to be positive, and we have to be doing this in the best manner as possible. So I really want people to think about what they're doing when they're out there, how they're doing it, and how they're presenting the best message. Because I've seen some horrible things in the woods, and one just it follows this example. We went to a campsite a little while ago, and it was a wreck site way back in there, and there was a tree growing in the middle of it, and somebody had decided it would be really fun to hammer empty bullet shells into the bark of the tree. And the entire thing, as high as I could reach, had different size handgun rounds, shotguns, rifles, literally hammered to the back of it. That looks like a state. Like, if I seen that, I would be so upset people were back there. I was so upset people were back there. And so it doesn't take much to clean up your mess when you're finished. Like,
I was going to say, I'm from the mindset I take my spent casings when I go hunting. You know what I mean? I will be walking through, I like to bird hunt. You know what I mean? I like small game. I find it fun. You walk through the woods. 9 times out of 10, I don't actually shoot anything. It's just a reason to get out. Same as like the bow and stuff you see behind me there. It's excuses to get in the woods, but I don't know how often I'll be walking through like old abandoned apple orchards and stuff like that. And you can fill your pockets and bags with spent shotgun shells everywhere and the wadding. And it's just so much mess unnecessarily. If you got to shoot 300 rounds to nab 1 or 2 birds, go to a range for a while.
Yeah. And I mean, you don't have to kill yourself to find every friggin' round. You don't. Like,
No,
I've been in, like, I went moose hunting and I lost a couple of shells, and I felt bad for it because they're hard to find. But the ones I can, I collect whenever I can. Sometimes they bounce off, they hit a rock, they go into a crack, they're gone, right? But you don't take 5 seconds to look around. You can see find them. Things like that. Cleaning up after yourself. Don't leave beer cans. Do not leave. Oh,
don't leave anything that's not supposed to be in the woods. Unless it came from the woods, cups. Don't leave it in the woods.
Tim Hortons cups, beer cans. Oh, my goodness.
The number one thing that I can hear right now and people are going to groan is, oh, it's biodegradable. Do you know how long it takes for a Tim Hortons cup to actually break down to nothing?
Yeah.
Very long time.
Clean up after yourself. We're not children. We're adults. Act like it. Anyways, get out there, have fun, leave no trace, but leave positive attitudes when you leave.
Absolutely. Thanks for joining us here tonight, folks. Sorry I sound like a mess. Ben picked up the slack on this one, so please thank him. It was a great topic. I think it's a very important thing that we need to talk about, specifically because there is danger for this to go away. We are already starting to see in Eastern Canada bans on woods travel and stuff like that for related to fire reasons, but it's not a long push to go from fire reasons to, you know what? We're just going to keep people out of the woods to protect them, period. You know what I mean? This is why we kind of compared it the way we did, because they'll just get rid of everything to prevent the couple is what's happening.
They know they can do it. Like, they now know they can block the woods off and people will listen, and they can find the people who don't. And so it's an easier step to do it again. And sometimes it's necessary. And don't get me wrong, there's times we're going to have to stay out. And I think being on the right side of that is really important.
Absolutely.
So when you're on the wrong side, they're going to listen to you. But if you're always the one just yelling about absolutely everything, they're never going to listen to you. Well, that's just the whiner over in the corner. Be the guy that's reasonable, and they like, hey, we have to keep this guy on our side.
Yeah, exactly. And just be the voice of reason. You can have an opinion. Don't be aggressive with it. You know what I mean? There's a time and a place and a way to do everything. And I guess that's my final thought for the night.
Yeah. So yeah, let both sides be heard, but make sure that you are the reasonable person in the conversation.
Exactly. All right, folks. We'll see you next week. I have an idea for a topic. I'll talk to Ben. I just didn't have the voice for it tonight. Later, folks.